Hello, today, Monday, November 27th. Imran and I are both recovering from Black Friday shock, holiday specials everywhere. I'll let the old wallet cool off, right? Imran, I didn't realize that was a thing over there in London. You guys have Black Friday.
Ouch. All I can say is ouch.
Yeah. We're told over the long term that we're going to save a bunch of money by spending everything that we have over the last couple of days. So good luck to us. A smooth segue would be a Black Friday special on put options.
Well, they are on discount, to be fair.
Right. So we bring up here the single stock strategy compass from you, Imran. We were just looking at this. You see two interesting trades here, buying puts in Visa and UNH. And why don't you start to walk us through these, and then I will touch on a couple things that I see interesting here.
Sure. So, again, the compass, I screened the top 30 stocks for trading volume in singles in the US, see what looks the most stretched on our compass, whether it's coming from spot being overbought or oversold, whether it's vol being near its highs or lows. And we're kind of homing in today on Visa. So Visa looks pretty overbought in the near term. The RSI is around 73 on the daily.
Amazing
That's
chart on that. Look at that.
Pretty pumped. It's had some reasonably good news. It's done a lot of tie-ups with various crypto companies and things like that. So kind of riding a bit of the optimism in that space as well. We have seen some insider selling apparently as well. So we just think a pullback in the near term from these levels looks fairly likely. And if you were inclined to play that, short-dated puts are on quite cheap vols, like looking at about 15, because the realize has collapsed. Like realize has been in single digits recently. That's helped the vol come in. And therefore, if you want to play that pullback, there's a reasonably good opportunity there.
I like this one. I in general, and what we put in our morning note was just that everything just seems rather overbought and seems due for at least a short-term correction. I think that if you're bullish here, you'd want to see that short-term correction. I like these short-dated kind of cheap puts as a trade, not as sort of an ultimate top, because you certainly can't see that far in the future at this point. But vols, not only in Visa, as you pointed here, but implied vol in general, I think is really quite low. I think at the monies in the S&P this week are like an 8. So, over the there's an overall theme here, I guess, that syncs with what you just outlined in Visa. Short for a trade, not necessarily calling an all-time top here.
Yeah, and it's the same trade essentially in UNH, right? United Health. We've gone a little bit longer just because that's the protocol. We usually offer a very short-dated trade, something a little bit longer dated. In terms of UNH, it has done pretty well relative to the rest of the sector. So you look at the XLV chart, it's not going to look quite as good as that. So this stock has been kind of trending higher. It's not done it's not done a Lilly though. That's been on fire because of that. The special kind of weight loss drugs that have been coming out. But we just think, again, a candidate there that is clearly overbought in UNH and using some January downside will get you some leverage to that scenario. Doesn't mean you hold it till Jan. If you get your pullback, you probably take your money and run. Yeah,
so this one, since it's a little bit of a longer dated put, any specific price level or any significant sort of marker you say, okay, I'll close out my put now?
I mean, you look at that chart, right? I mean, it's you kind of, if you're in a pullback, you're probably going to target something like 520, right? Yep. So that's an area where it was an old kind of resistance going back to April as well. So I think, yeah, the chart, that would be a kind of a textbook end of correction type move down to 520, and then you'd bang them out.
Yeah, interesting. A couple interesting ideas there. So thank you for that. A couple of things that came up. We run some scanners here. This is how I pull up the names that I think are interesting, and then I kind of just flip through them. So on the top here is what we call our squeeze scanners. These are names that we think could have options positions above that could really help these stocks. Sometimes ETFs will show up in here, rarely, but these stocks could really run. So if you wanted kind of a YOLO type trade, or if you really wanted to press some type of bet higher, these are the names that show up on top. And then the bottom we have our volatility risk premium trades. And sometimes these show up as names that have had significant bottoms or significant tops. I generally don't like looking at the earnings trades because I'm not trying to flag earnings names. And there's really two interesting things here. I suppose three. Number one is the crypto names have all shown back up on the scanner. So if you look at like a Coinbase or Mara, things like that, these things were on our squeeze scanner from 2 sessions ago. So it was about 2 weeks ago. And they, when you look at this chart, you can't help but feel like this is due for at least a little bit of consolidation. But man, these things are really moving. They look really good. And, if you're looking for some long beta in your portfolio, this will give you a lot of beta of getting long some of this stuff. And the fact that they show up on these squeeze scanners, again, tells us that there's a lot of calls above. That implied vol is not too stretched necessarily upside based on these metrics. And so just crypto in general is looking good. And you just flagged a crypto name there earlier. Well, Visa partnering with crypto names, I should say. The other interesting thing that we picked up is this name ARM. It's not a name that I'm terribly familiar with, but it has a very interesting chart. So it's showing up on our squeeze scanner, which again says that there are strikes above. But what's interesting, the strikes above could help pull this name higher. But what's interesting in this case is that it's also showing up on our VRP scanner, and this name hasn't been around for too long, right? So it's pretty newly listed, which adds a little bit of an element of trickiness to the situation when you're looking at longer dated implied vols, right? It's got a lot of gamma for what's coming up this next week, and I just think that it's looking very stretched. So this is the term structure for ARM. And as you can see, we're in this backwardated state. It did get an upgrade from a bank recently. But the trade I actually like here is structuring some type of counter spread. So I would look at selling possibly something like the 8th, maybe like a 65 strike call, and then buying something like the January calls against that. Something that plays this volatility cooling off to the upside again, because it's had such a big run here in a short amount of time. And it has kind of a little bit of that meme feel to it, I think. So that's one that I think is particularly interesting that showed up on the scanners that I hadn't seen before. Imran, any comment on this one before I shift to my last one?
No, I mean, I think these sort of names, you can see though, it's done in is it a weekly or a daily? In a matter of 3 or 4 days, it's gone from 55 to 65 pretty much, right? So just kind of, if anyone does go and sell front end calls, they need to size it in a way that they're not going to lose their shirt if it goes from 65 to 75 in like a matter of days.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to be naked calls in this thing. I would agree with that. But the playing sort of that backwardation coming off a little bit, there's also a very sharp call skew in this thing, particularly in short dated options. You can see here, this is the call skew. Yeah. So there's a lot of people betting on explosive upside, and I don't know much about the fundamentals of this name, but that's why I like the counter spread idea, because I would bet on these shorter dated calls, cooling off a little bit. You protect yourself somewhat if you own kind of that Jan call. And I think that could be kind of an interesting setup, as well as possibly, call spreads and the like. If you all watching this have a little bit more of a fundamental view on the stock, then maybe you can structure something a little bit different around there. Then the other one that I thought was interesting, a little bit different, was both Love and Jets. And I wasn't familiar with Jets. Jets is the airline ETF apparently. And so you can see that the airlines in general have not participated with a whole lot of upside here. I was looking at IYR, which is the transportation. Not IYR. Can't remember the transportation ETF. I have it here, IYT. There we go. So there's your transportation ETF. And Love showed up as a volatility risk premium name, which, you can see how much this has underperformed the IYT in general, and then this Jets ETF writ large. So I think this could be a little bit of a sign here that Love could be due for a bounce or a little bit of a catch-up. This could be an interesting pairs trade maybe if you were to maybe short Jets and get long Love Airlines, which is Southwest, or just sort of sell put spreads. I think is kind of another interesting idea here. I haven't seen a name like this show up on our squeeze scanner in a while, and the fact that it does show up along with the ETF itself, I thought was rather interesting, and especially when you look at these airlines being at, what seems to be lows that go back to the 2020 levels. I think also here in the States, I saw a headline that I believe Sunday, which was yesterday, had something like 45,000 flights take off in the U.S., which I think is the most ever. You have to fact check me on that, somebody, but some kind of incredible stat like that. So kind of interesting synergies here showing up on the vol scanner with these, major lows, I think, or visits back to the 2020 levels. So what do you think, Imran? Anything you see interesting?
No, it's interesting, right? I haven't really looked at the airlines in ages. I used to look at them when we were in the midst of COVID, because they were clearly very active at that point, right? And it was like when the vaccines came out, they went berserk to the upside, and the fact that they bled all the way back down over the last couple of years from those highs is quite interesting. I agree.
Yeah, at least here in the U.S., I think Delta is kind of the premier airline, I guess I would say, or kind of considered the gold standard of U.S. airlines, if there's such a thing. And so you compare Love versus Delta, and they also had so many problems with the unions and different things like that, and I think some of that is smoothed out now. They've come to agreements. I believe in general, again, we don't pay attention a whole lot to the fundamentals here. We just look at vols and the options land, and this is something I thought was rather interesting. Again, especially the fact that the ETF shows up kind of at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Anything less before we kind of separate here? You got any quick notes on the macro markets, sort of writ large? You want to note?
Just the VIX. I just think the VIX might have overshot a little bit to the downside.
Yeah.
It's obviously the S&P's rallied, so generally the VIX tends to go low. I thought we were going to hit 12. Remember, we talked about this. I thought we were going to hit a 12 handle before the end of the year. I didn't realize it happened on Thanksgiving weekend. Right? So it went a little bit quicker than I anticipated. But now you look at some of the other things that the VIX tends to be anchored to, like the VXX, not the VXX, the VVIX and the MOVE index. So it does look like the VVIX is stabilized in the low 80s. MOVE is still heading lower, but it's got quite a lot of support at 105, near where it is now, whereas the VIX just blasted through the floor and hit 12.5. So I think the VIX probably has a good 2 to 3 volt bounce in it. Probably doesn't happen unless the S&P pulls back below 4,500. But I think that's probably the most likely outcome in the next week or two. You get a little bit of a retracement on S&P to 4,500, maybe below that level. VIX has a 3% pop back onto a 15 handle. And then away you go. You can buy the Santa rally maybe, right? But I'm not really looking to buy the Santa rally today, right?
Yeah, that's exactly my sentiment. We rewrote last week and then again this morning that we're overbought on a bunch of different reasons, and the low and implied vols is one of them. This is actually realized vol here on your screen. 5-day realized vol is at a 5, which is extremely short-dated measurement over this last holiday weekend. But you can see that's a low over the last year, really, that red line there. And then the other one that's interesting is 1 month realized, which now that we've lost some of the days from that huge October explosive rally, those days are starting to roll out of our window, our realized vol calculation. So 1 month realized vol, which is the green line, has really collapsed to about 11.4. So if you wanted to say, hey, is VIX cheap or rich? If you had 3 points to that number, generally that's a fair barometer for where you think VIX should be located. Now, obviously we've come off of VIX being at 20s and we're bleeding down, so maybe you want to take a little bit of that off. But to your point, VIX at 13, 12, 13 with realized vol at 11.5. There's not a lot of padding there at all. And then one of the other charts that I wanted to flag here as well was SDEX, which measures a 1% out of the money put, 1 month, one standard deviation spider put versus the at the money. And you can see this thing has just plummeted, as you can see on your screen here. It's really dropped to new lows here, suggesting that no one wants that downside out of the money put protection. That's only one standard deviation out of the money put. We're not talking tail risk here, right? And then the other one that I thought was really interesting as well, this happens to be a nation's measurement. This is Volley's. Volley measures the at the money put 1 month out on spiders. And so as you can see here, we're back now. So if you want to say, hey, what's at the money vol looking like? It is down to these levels, which starts to go pre-pandemic, right? Yeah. And again, these conditions don't have to completely unwind, suggesting we're at, the all-time high. It's just that we've gone so far down, to your point. It's sort of like an oversold condition in vol that, hey, maybe we just pop back up kind of a little bit. 4,600 is still our top signal here. And I think a pullback, even just in the 4,500 area, would really just give a rest to some of these overbought conditions and oversold conditions in vol. And so I think we're in sync there.
What would you rather own, gun to your head, an S&P put or a VIX call right now?
S&P put. I don't think that vol would be that responsive, and I think it would get sold off. So, we could go down to 4,500 and vol could just get kind of sold there, and then we're sitting at 4,500. And so I'd prefer to almost have those be short delta here as opposed to long vol.
Okay, interesting.
That scenario. Yeah. And I think, again, there's so many people that would be wanting to jump on, selling vol, right, as soon as they get an opportunity. And so, I think that having the market pull back down in that 4,500 area would just really help almost set up a better rally into year end. So,
yeah.
All right, Imran, thanks very much for doing this again today, our Monday morning meeting. How can people get a hold of you and learn a little bit more about some of your views here over the next weeks?
Sure. So I'm options_insight on Twitter. Pretty active on there.
Yep.
Obviously, our website, all the links, our link tree is on there in our profile. So all the links to all of our content and stuff is there. But our website is options-insight.com, where you can come check us out, kick the tires for a month. We give a free month to all our products. So you can see if our research can help you be a better trader, make a bit more money.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Imran. I'm at SpotGamma on Twitter. You can also reach us at spotgamma.com. We did have a Black Friday deal going on. I think that's still lingering around if you want to check that out. And as always, at the top left or right of your screen, I don't know which one you'll see it, there is a QR code. If you scan that, you can get to academy.spotgamma.com, where Imran and I have put together a comprehensive options training course, which takes you all the way from what's an option up to dynamic portfolio hedging. Imran is our fantastic instructor for that course, so please check that out, and we will see you next Monday.
Thanks.